Thank you so much. Okay, thank you. We are back on the sixth type of and that would be the thinking with your feelings. Believe in negative feelings without ever questioning them. You know, sometimes we do get this, this, you know, what we call gut feeling, or we feel like, oh, we sometimes are empaths and we can feel somebody else's emotion and we think it's ours. And so we have to question those. That goes back to taking every thought captive to the obedience of Messiah. And the guilt beating, thinking in words like should, must, ought, and have to. That was, oh goodness, I'm still recuperating from that, because that's the way I was raised. And we are raised in a very shame and guilt society. Anyhow, and everything is you should, you ought to, and you know, especially in school, you didn't do something, you know, you should have done that, you should have, or we disobey our parents, and they'll you should have called me, you must do this, you ought to do that. And so we grow up with all those should, and it affects some more than others. It definitely affected me to wanting to perform. Some people are more into I don't care less, and they actually numb themselves and don't even want to go there. So it creates a not very committed type of personalities, and etc. Things like that.
Rebellious.
Yeah. And then you have the labeling. You have the attaching a negative label to yourself or someone else. And that we are a very labeling society too. Oh, she's just lazy. Oh, she's just,
ADHD. I have ADHD.
Right.
I'm an introvert. I'm lots of labels.
We like to label a lot, ourselves and others. And the blame, that is unfortunately inherited from our forefathers, Adam and Eve, blaming someone else for the problems you have. You know, the woman you gave me, the serpent deceived me, always somebody else. And he calls this one a red ant, because this one is almost everybody has that one. And it's true, it's come down our DNA. So then, let's see.
I bet he calls it a red ant because if you think about it, blaming others hurts the other person too. It's like it bites them too, not just yourself.
Right. And it brings, how red ants really hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the blaming always hurts really bad. Others and ourselves, mm-hmm. When we do that to ourselves. Because we can tend to blame ourselves too for everything that happens. It was all my fault. If I just want to kick myself. I should have, and all those questions.
It's like Charlie says when people shoulda all over themselves is what she said. She said, "Quit shoulda yes. all over yourself." Like, quit shoulda in.
Yes. Okay, so here's ant killing exercise. Whenever you feel sad, mad, nervous, or out of control, write down your automatic negative thought, label it, and then kill it by talking back to it. And so here's some examples that he gives. So let's say this is what Dr. Amen said, my wife never listens to me. So that is, you write it down, and then what type of ant is that? They're always thinking, right? It's just, she never listens to me. That is that type of ant. That's just not true. And so you tell yourself, that's not true. She often listens to me. Today, she's just distracted, So that's how you talk back at them. You just think about, is this true? If it's not, then you tell it what you want. We always should give that the benefit of the doubt to others and not judge them, because we're not God. We don't know really what's going on in somebody else's life. Another one is, my boss doesn't like me. I've heard that a lot. What ant is that? The mind reading. I don't know that for sure. Maybe she's just having a bad day. I need to talk to her. Yeah. So if we can come up with things like that, then we can talk back at them, and then they stop, because after you think that, you're no longer upset. It's like now, like in the case of the boss, you actually feel bad. It's like, oh, I wonder if there's something I can do for her. So your mind just left you and went into help mode, right? Another very common one is, I'm a failure. So what is that? A labeling ant. Well, sometimes I fail, but many times I succeed. You know, we're not 100% failures. we do something right. So, oh, it's my husband's fault. That would be what? The blame one, right? I will look at my part of the problem and look for ways to make it better. So instead of blaming him, like Adam said, the woman you gave me, no, I ate from that. And you know what, God? Not only I ate from that fruit that she gave me, but so I disobeyed, but I didn't protect her. I should have been talking to that serpent and saying, do not tell her that. That is not true. And I did not. So those are the things that we have to remember, that we can't do that to ourselves. We have to take responsibility, but there is a part that I have to deal with. Let's say it is my husband's fault, but he didn't act in a vacuum. He did something out of something that I did too. So why don't I look at my part and say, okay, I could have done that better. And I'm so sorry. Yes, Father, I did that. And I have no one to blame but me. I should have not disobeyed, and I should have protected my wife, and I didn't. Yeah, that would have it just dissolves all of that. So your thoughts matter. Learn to kill the ants and train your thoughts to be positive. It will benefit your mind, body, and mood. And then he gives this worksheet just so that you can, get in the habit of doing that. You notice an ant, write it down, identify the type, kill the ant by talking back to it, challenge that thought. And really, when we do that, if we can teach our kids that, we are teaching them how to think properly and how to develop good muscles. Okay, challenge that thought. Is that true? Is that 100% true? We talked about those 5 questions. So if we can teach our kids to do that from an early age, oh my goodness, they have better, they have more success than we've had learning this, older.
Yeah. I'm like so thankful for all this stuff that you've taught me, because I'm watching it even so, because some of these thoughts that come to us, or if you think of a fiery dart from the enemy, they don't always just come. Sometimes it could actually come from spoken words that have actually been spoken. So like, I'm thinking about what I told you about some of my friends' kids and different words that they'll say back and forth to each other. And, they're just exploring. They don't know what words, they're testing boundaries. So they hardly even know what they're saying. But we had an instance where someone was calling the kids all losers. And Isaac, no, he's like, Mom, he's calling me a loser. He's at that age where he's talent. He's trying to see how I'm going to respond. And I'm like, well, what's the truth? What's the truth, Isaac? And he sits there and he's like, I'm not a loser. And I'm like, that's right. What are you? And he's like, God doesn't make losers. I'm like, that's right. You're God's kid, aren't you? And it's like, he's 3, he'll be 4 in a few days on Simi's birthday.
Yes.
Birthday.
We do.
But you're right. Like sometimes as I'm like watching my kids and I'm trying to retrain, I've actively doing this retraining for myself and then just kind of doing it with them. Kind of like I told you, I'm learning Italian, but I'm doing it with Rhea. We're like doing all this together. Sometimes I'm like, man, I envy that a little bit, but I'm also I'm so grateful. But at the same time, I'm like, oh man, I can't imagine how different of a
Oh.
person I would have been
Mhm.
as a teenager, insecure, just the decisions I would have not made had I had some sort of mental stability in my thinking. You know what I mean?
Right. I know. It would have been so much better. Now, I didn't even know I was Jewish until I was in my late 40s and started actually walking into learning really for the first time, doing the portions, the yearly cycle, and learning the feast and actually doing them. And I'm like, Father, you could have shown me this earlier. Why did you wait this long? And because I have been already doing it for about 3 years. I was 52. And then I remember reading something somewhere that Abraham was called when he was, and it said 52. I can't remember where I read that, but it said that he was 52 and it was at my age at that moment. And I'm like, oh, what, you could have, start him from the get-go, and you didn't. And so I'm in good company. Sometimes we just we want the best, obviously, for our children, but then we want, what if that would have been my case,
We want the best for all of us,
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're right. It's all in the timing that it's supposed to
Yeah.
be given.
Yeah.
Maybe I wouldn't have received it or something because of the upbringing that I wasn't, the kind of home I wasn't. I wouldn't have received any of that well. But anyways, I
Well,
think
the edge that you have because of your past,
right.
it's what you're the perfect instrument for him to use you in different situations. You have that little edge that you can get in, you can speak into, that it comes very natural to you. And some people may say, man, I want to be like her, she just says it, and but yeah, and I remember saying that to a friend. He was very funny, he just had this wit. And I said, man, I wish, because I think of stuff like, 10 minutes later, right? I'm like, oh, I should have said that, but I don't think it in the moment. And so I said to him, I would have loved to have your wit. You just you just say it immediately. The stuff that comes into your mind, it's just, and he was funny. And he said to me, no, sis, you wouldn't. I'm like, what do you mean? Because this wit, I got it after being hurt again and again and having a rough life. And
Mhm.
I learned that was my defense mechanism. So I learned to be sarcastic and cynical and all this, and just to make people laugh because I needed to make myself laugh. So
Oh,
after I heard that, it's like, you're right. I don't want to go through that in order to have what you have, but I'm glad you have it.
yeah. Yeah. No, that's true. I was
Yeah.
going to say too, with like examples, it's funny, some of y'all who are in the actual like chat of ours on our band, Titus 2 private, or it's like public, but it is private, I guess, from the normal chats. I was like, of course, and this time the Lord would give me a testimony for this. So like a practical mom aunt that like all of us probably go through. My son has been sick since Thursday, and he got like a really high 102 fever on Thursday.
Mm.
And Simi knows, and some of you probably who know me or have seen any of my other stuff, like we've had some like scary health stuff when it came to high fevers. My daughter
Mhm.
had a fever. We've had febrile seizures in the past, so
Mhm.
an automatic negative thought that instantly comes to me as soon as I feel something warm, like my kid's warm, and
Mm.
I'm like, oh gosh, there's a temperature.
Mhm.
It's like, that fortune telling
Mhm.
side of things can come, and it's like, oh, it's gonna end in a
Yeah.
seizure, or it's gonna end in, a hospital visit, or, whatever. And
Mhm.
so I've had, I know Sarita's been here since you started your calls, and I think
Mhm.
Ruth too, but we've all had some wonderful training that I've gotten to take with me. And I was telling Simi on the phone the other day, it was really nice to actually go through a cycle of sickness. And yes, there is still moments of adrenaline rush. I mean, he ended up having croup settle in on Sunday night, and he'd wake up and he couldn't breathe, and and he's freaking out, and I'm like shaky, but I'm calming him because I'm like telling myself what the truth is. God made your body to be regenerative in its nature, self-healing in its nature, whether it's a supernatural healing or whether it's in the process he designed for it to heal. You are healing. You are going to be healed. And, it was like, that's how I calmed myself to then calm him. But I was shaken, like at certain parts when he was like gasping to breathe, but it was just that stridor that happened.
Yeah.
I was like, everything's going to be okay. We got through the night, and then we did. We went to the doctor or our pediatrician, and they gave him a little breathing treatment because he needed that support, and that's okay. We're as natural as we can be. But I just wanted to explain a real life situation like this. I didn't have a pen and paper. I do think that it's good if you haven't actually done this to do it with a pen and paper.
Yeah.
And it may happen and you can't hold it. You just park the thought and be like, I'm going to come back to this tonight when the kids are asleep. And I really want to deal with this so that when it happens again tomorrow, if it's something that regularly occurs, I have a plan in place, But, now that I've kind of figured it out, it's like, I'm just in the middle of it and I just stop, I'm like, this isn't, you can feel it now, it's like, I sense it. It's like, we're getting off the track. We're on the wrong rails here.
Right. Yeah. That is awesome.
Yeah.
It's so good. So good. I'm so thankful for all that he's teaching us, for sure. It's, and every day something new. Because everything builds on each other. So having those steps gets you to a place that when something happens, it's like, okay, I know to do this, that, and the other. And right now I have no idea where to go beyond this. And he'll give you another step and you make another connection. It's like, I've been doing the creation gospel for over 7 years, and I've done it in those 7 years, like a dozen times. And I still make connections. And it's like, this is so awesome. Or somebody will say something, we're all unique. So somebody will come up with a perspective that I never thought of. Keisha and I talk about this all the time. It's like, did you see that one coming? She goes, nope, that one's new to me. And we get that all the time. And it's awesome, to get new perspectives. And then you make, or whatever you say that had nothing to do with what, my brain has been thinking, but that triggers something that I hadn't even thought of that all of a sudden connects, and it's just amazing. That's why walking in society,
Community.
we're supposed to be in community. We're not supposed to be isolated. It's just been just awesome.
It's funny you said that because earlier before the call, I've been like trying to make a practice of like sitting in the grass and just listening, being quiet, watching the birds, or like, I'm just trying to be more mindful, and give myself space to write again, and so the kids were playing really well. And I went outside and I just sat in the grass and I was sitting there and looking around, especially after Isaac's been sick. I'm like, we need vitamin D. And I was like captivated by the bees. We have a bunch of little clover flowers all through our grass. And so I'm seeing all these bees, they're everywhere, like going from clover to clover to clover. And I was like, I knew the spirit was speaking, it's like, I was so captivated. I'm like, they're the tiniest little creatures. They have these little bags on their legs and they're carrying the pollen. I mean, I could see them. They were like so close. And I was like, and they have no clue their importance for this world to continue. And it was like this huge word just was coming to me, like, we are the same in the sense of like, we need, like, each little bee needs each other. Each flower needs these bees to take, and they go from flower to flower, and they're picking a little bit of something up from each one and leaving a little bit of something from each flower. And like, just like the bees, we humans are the same way, and the community we're a part of affects us. We get a little bit from each person that we're around, and then
Yes.
we leave a little bit with each
Mhm.
person that we come in contact with. And
Yeah.
it's like, what am I taking and what am I leaving?
Mm.
How am I flowing in this society? Like,
Yeah.
and I was just also really inspired and like motivated by the work ethic of these bees. Like
Mhm.
this whole word automatic, I really kind of, it's like making sense now why the Lord was even
Mm.
showing this to me,
Mhm.
because I was asking him kind of, I'm like, is it that they're just so obedient, or is this an automatic programming that you put in these bees, and I'm like,
Mhm.
because we have this intellect that we fight with, and
Mhm.
we aren't automatic to do whatever it is that maybe you've put in our tasks, or as our mission to do maybe. But these bees, it's like, there's nothing distracting them. They wake up with the sun, they do the thing they need to do. And it's like, it's automatic, but it's that good automated thing. And I'm like, but you didn't make us that way, like we're
He
not,
he does. He did though.
you think?
Yeah, remember when we talked about the new neural pathways that one dendrite connects to the other is kind of like the cows create this pathway. Those are neural pathways. And
Oh,
if
I
we're
see what you're
still,
saying. These thoughts that, like, he programmed our brain to be automated, but the problem is there's been a breach in the system with
well,
other
not
wrong.
not really. What happens is he has given us all, like that menorah, those 7 days of creations are in us. And if we would walk by his patterns, we create an automatic thought or an automatic behavior. But in order to do that, you have to be like that little bee. You have to be very committed to every day do it. Remember, we talked about the Jacob's ladder. You do it every day, and you will, in 21 days, that thought will, or that pattern of behavior will be automatic. Well, no, it won't be automatic yet. It will be in your short-term memory, but it takes 3 cycles for it to be automatized. So then it will be automatic. And it's everything that you teach your children over and over and over. They do it for however long. And if they're consistent, they're really good at it. And then they can do things without even thinking. We do that driving. At the beginning, you were, okay, am I too close? Am I over here? Where's the line? We thought of all those little things, but we did it over and over. And now we can drive and be thinking of, oh, we got to the place. We didn't even know we were there,
Yeah, like
because,
mindlessly driving.
yeah. And if you think about all the processes that actually happen while you're driving, it's mind-boggling.
Mm-hmm.
It's really amazing. You are paying attention. Cars are coming, going. You know when to stop. You know when to go. You're doing all the stuff, and you may be thinking, "What am I cooking today? Oh, did I do that? Oh, I didn't send that." And, in your mind, you're thinking of all these things while your brain is literally conducting this machine that can kill someone and you, but it actually does it with no problem. So
Yeah.
you were diligent in learning all those things to make that trip from the grocery to your house automatic.
Thankfully, though, we're not like bees in that we're more expressive. We have so many
Yes.
emotions. Like there's a beauty to a human
Oh,
being compared.
oh yeah, our
But it was,
computer is incredible compared to
yeah,
theirs. They have certain functions, and that's all they do.
yeah.
We can
But
do
it's
so much
cool,
more.
like, because it really is. I feel like that was like a word he was trying to show me,
Yes.
like that little bee has no clue the impact it has on this world. But what about you? Do you realize your mundane
Mhm.
tasks that you do or don't do
Yes.
every day? So like if the bee just decided not to get up and go and do this, like our pollination, growth
Mhm.
of plants and food and fruits and vegetables, I mean,
Mhm.
done. That's why
Mhm.
there's a whole movement, save the bees,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so it's like the same for me. If I just didn't love my kids, serve my home,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I just didn't do any of the things these little mundane tasks. I didn't do the laundry. I mean, I don't know. They're little,
Yeah.
it impacts everybody and then the
It
whole world.
does. Yeah, it does. And I had one of my mentors, she used to say, she was a psychologist, and she said, I'd rather deal with kids because if I can work with those little minds, I don't have to deal with adults, sick adults.
Mm.
So yeah, doing all that, you're making sure that your kids are healthy, and then eventually they will be healthy adults that will have healthy families. And so yeah, it goes beyond what is it Charlie always says, you're impacting generations.
Amen.
Yes.
You think we should
But
end
I
the
love
recording?
that. Yes, before we finish, I just wanted to point out that that was such a Holy Spirit teaching that he gave you, because day 5 is the birds, the birds
The birds
and
and
the
the
fish.
bees.
Yeah.
Well, what's funny is when we were talking about that,
Hmm.
is when I thought I need to share that what
Hmm.
he did with me today at the bees, because I was
Yes.
like, why did he give this to me? Is he wanting me to write a poem? I've been writing lately. I'm like,
Yeah.
and then when you said that, I was like, I have to bring this back up later. It wasn't the right time,
Yeah.
but I just
Yeah.
thought that was
Perfect.
neat.
That
Yeah.
was perfect because it's day 5. He's so good. That's
Well,
awesome.
are we gonna stay and have an after party
Yes.
or okay?
Yes. And we can leave open for anybody that would like to ask a question now. And before we finish, we just have a few minutes before we finish the hour, and then we will close the recording, and then you can.
Unless somebody doesn't feel comfortable asking or talking about something on record, then we can turn it off too.
Yeah, but if you do want to leave something that you want to bless somebody else that's going to listen and it's not here yet, please unmute yourself and share or ask. Okay, Kimberly, I think we're ready to close the recording, and then